Welcome to this week's edition of the Reporter Roundtable here on the Red River Farm Network. I'm Don Wick, along with Randy Coonan, Kara Hart, and Megan Overby. This is our chance to pull out the reporter notebooks and see what's happening in the world of agriculture. First of all, that wheat tour, Wheat Quality Council, having their wheat tour across North Dakota this past week. Kara, Megan, you both had a chance to participate. Kara, you were there for the final outcome. What did we see this week?
Yeah, Don, thanks for the chance to update on the final day here. For overall tour, the weighted average for spring wheat in North Dakota is at 29.1 bushels per acre, 14 bushels per acre lower than the 2019 crop estimate. That was the last time we had an in-person tour. Last year, it was just virtual. Now, compared to a more average year like 2015, this was about 2/3 of the normal crop. The all wheat yield estimate is at 28.9 bushels per acre. I don't think that's a big shocker to people. I think the big question going into, and I also say coming back out of the tour, was the abandonment piece. Really hard to measure that. And people on the tour didn't really get a chance much to really measure. And I don't think that it would have been a very accurate number if they did. We'll definitely have to wait until fall for more details. But as I called around yesterday, gearing up and visiting with folks, Levi Hall, who is in the wheat industry, he wasn't part of the tour, but he did monitor from afar. He made the really good point that the tour missed a lot of the abandonment heavy areas. Like he was saying that Watford City, North Dakota area, he thought had 60 to 70% of that crop at abandonment. So it's really interesting conversation, I guess, that continues. Still some questions to be answered on the abandonment piece. I know Megan covered some of that stop where the second day, I think they kind of got a look at some of the areas that weren't as good a crop, and she may have more to add on what she's found or what she heard from folks on that second day of the tour.
Yes, so thanks, Kara. So as Dave Green of the Wheat Quality Council described it, on day 2 of the tour, he was right in the middle of that big dark red blotch in North Dakota that you can see on the drought map and has been there for quite some time. So that was on Wednesday, and he described the crop as lousy. Pretty much what they were expecting. I wouldn't say any worse than what they were expecting, but I know he noted that there were about 8 stops in a row that they put yields well under 20 bushels per acre. He said more like on the downward side of 10 bushels an acre. So he did dip into some of that. But again, that was crop that was still standing. You touched on it, Kara. That abandonment piece is really hard to quantify or to get some data on, because who knows, was that crop actually seeded or planted into something else? Have those bales already been removed from the field? There's just a lot of factors that play into that. And so in the western and north central parts of North Dakota that they toured on that day, spring wheat yields were estimated at 24.6 bushels per acre. That compares to the 5-year average of 42.2 bushels. So significantly lower, and the Durum average yield was 23.6. I guess one positive that I heard from many tour participants is that while the bushels may be on the low side this year, it is a very marketable crop. We're already having discussions of the early crop that is coming off, that there's some very high protein levels out there. And so that's just one thing to take forward is, if we have a very marketable crop, what are farmers going to see out the elevator come harvest time when it comes to the price and some deductions or premiums for that crop?
I'll also add, in talking with folks who went into Minnesota, western Minnesota yesterday on the tour, that final day, looked at the northeastern part of North Dakota and into the western side. There is some inverted protein scales being seen in Minnesota. We're getting reports of that. And one of the tour drivers told me that yesterday as well. So that, you're right, Megan. I think that protein piece is going to be really interesting to watch. And aside from the crop, what I was eager to see participation in this tour this year, because of course last year it was a COVID year, they did a virtual event. This year, there were about between 40 and 45 in-person participants, not really a lot of government presence just because of the COVID restrictions. But I was actually really surprised to see some of the faces on the tour, including the National Association of Wheat Growers CEO, Chandler Gould. I don't think I've ever seen him on the wheat tour before, and he was on this week's spring wheat tour in North Dakota. We visited with him, just kind of trying to get a sense of what he hoped to see during the week. And he said, this is one of the largest wheat producing states in the country. He wanted to see the drought issues. And I know NOG is focused on some of those disaster programs. We've talked a lot about the WIT Plus program, also the quality loss adjustment program too. So he wanted to see that as well. But this is also, I will note, the first time, I think, since Chandler has been to North Dakota in a NOG capacity. He was telling me the last time he'd been in North Dakota was in 2018 when he worked for Farmers Union. He did some legislative work on the national level for them too. And he was telling me it's important to help farmers get through the drought. He said, talking with wheat growers and the North Dakota Grain Growers Association, he was looking forward to doing that. I know he rode along in vehicles with a lot of those members. He was talking about having a unified voice in Washington, D.C. on issues impacting wheat growers. This is all interesting to me because the North Dakota Grain Growers Association and North Dakota aren't members of the National Association of Wheat Growers. And that's a story that we covered. Don Wick actually broke the news. Don, how many years ago was that? And maybe kind of give us a recap of how that went down.
It's got to be a couple of years ago when there was some frustration with the representation from NOG on behalf of North Dakota grain growers and some DC issues. And so the North Dakota grain growers pulled out of NOG at that time. So yeah, certainly interesting, kind of the politics. We don't normally see that on the wheat tour. We had seen some scattered rains, certainly not very much. Smoke's probably been the bigger story this week weather-wise. Randy, what are we seeing as far as the row crops?
That's continues to be a story of the haves and have-nots. It all depends on whether you had rain and actually what that crop was planted on top of. What was in it last year. The prevent plant ground still continues to look the best, and then anything with, especially like the old sugar beet ground in the valley here, or anything that had like potatoes on it last year that sucked a lot of moisture out. That looks pretty tough and continues to look tough. Nationally too, it's kind of what the guys I've talked with on the national scale keep saying that Eastern Corn Belt crop looks very good. Starting to hear a few guys question whether it's going to be good enough though to offset the losses here in the Northern Plains. But some guys here in the Northern Plains also are saying they've kind of a testimony to the genetics, the newer seed, that this crop does look better than it ought to, given the amount of rain that it's had on it, very little. And then even the guys that are doing some irrigation are struggling to keep up. They're saying by the time they normally put like an inch and a half down on each pass of the pivot, and by the time they get done with their running their pivot the one time around, it's dried, and then so they got to just run them continually almost just to keep moisture on those crops. So again, it's all about dry weather, or who has rain, who didn't, when the rains came. So even the Eastern Corn Belt is saying too, they do need rain. It's been drying there now for the last week or so, so they're going to need rain here shortly to keep this, especially when they enter pod fill with the soybean crop.
Certainly need pretty regular rains during a typical growing season, and this one's been a lot of stress. There's been a lot of anticipation in DC regarding the cattle industry. Both the House and Senate had some hearings this week as it relates to what's going on with cattle markets, what's going on with packer margins, consolidation within the packing industry. Megan, you've had a chance to follow some of those hearings this week. It's interesting. We had perspective. I know JBS, Tyson both represented, but you all said auction barns, ranchers there as well. What was your takeaway from those hearings this week?
Yes, so let's start with that piece where we talk about some of the meat packers, because that is a voice that up until this point we really haven't heard a whole lot from. And so that was in the Senate Judiciary Committee, which usually doesn't hear about these supply and demand, marketing agreements, or just the economics of beef production in that capacity. But of course, that was the case Wednesday. They first heard from National Farmers Union President Rob LaRue, and he just said this is a matter of fairness. And, we know National Farmers Union standpoint on this issue, and that message hasn't changed much. So then we move on to Tyson Foods Group Vice President Shane Miller, who also testified, emphasizing that the company is committed to provide fair compensation to farmers and ranchers. The use of alternative marketing arrangements was a frequent discussion point. Tim Shellpepper, who leads the JBS USA Fed Beef Division, said that AMAs provide a mechanism for producers to realize premium prices for the investments made in superior genetics, herd health management, marketing, you name it. And so that was in the Senate Judiciary Committee. We have that story online at rrfn.com. And so there's a link to that complete testimony. You can read their written testimony, view the video. There's just a lot to dissect, and I don't think we have enough time left in the week to cover it all. But I'll quick touch on what happened in the House Agriculture Subcommittee as well, which meant that morning, so Wednesday morning, prior to the Senate hearing. And we had testimony from some ag economists, animal protein analysts, you name it. One that stuck out to me was Jason Lusk, who's an ag economist at Purdue University. He identified 3 issues facing the industry. May not be new news, but again, we're building a common theme here. So those issues are capacity, improved price transparency, and policies that improve overall health of the cattle industry. My final note on that was a ranking member, Dusty Johnson of South Dakota, asked, they've been hearing lately about, an additional 5,000 head of capacity coming online for beef processing. And he asked the question, so if that's so, what would be the impact on packer margins? And Rabo Research's Dustin A. Heron said, increasing packing capacity would actually likely reduce packer margins. And so a lot of food for thought there. Again, go online. We have some resources linked on both the House Agriculture Subcommittee and Senate Judiciary Committee hearings.
Yeah. Again, there's been a lot of work on that, really all the way back to that Holcomb, Kansas fire. We've had a lot of attention on what's happening in packer margins and such. Last couple of years, we've been looking at the WIP Plus funding as it relates to disaster relief care. There's been some action this week as it relates to the years 2020 and 2021.
Yeah, Don, that's right. And I'll get to that in a second. But man, how many of you all that are tuning in out there remember, if you're in the Northern Plains, you know this WIP Plus program really well because you probably signed up for it if you had disasters in 2018 and 2019. And lawmakers are trying to get something extended for the disasters that we've seen in 2020 and 2021 as well. But also something a little bit more permanent too, but I think this is the first step toward that. And this week, the House Agriculture Committee marked up and passed what they called the 2020 WIP Plus Reauthorization Act. Parts of that bill include all losses, all causes of loss that were included with the previous WIP Plus program. This would also expand on the drought language as well. And I think if you are in farm country and you represent this area, I think there's been a lot of positive response on that because of the drought that we've seen up here. There's also some language about dairies too, I think adding that in as well. Now, the cost of the changes to the WIP Plus program was expected to be in the year-end spending bill in the House, but the House passed the 2020 Ag Appropriations Bill. It did not include that new funding for WIP Plus, but instead they did a separate plan with those dollars passed this week in the House Agriculture Committee. Now, what happens on the Senate side? I mean, that's the other piece of this too. Of course, we monitor continuing what's happening in the House, but North Dakota Senator John Hoeven, he's works on the Senate Agriculture Appropriations Committee as the ranking member. He said he wants to include WIP Plus funding for 2020 and 2021 in the Senate's version of the new spending bill. And in the Senate Ag Committee, we also saw ranking member Bozeman come in and say that he would be supportive of seeing WIP Plus be discussed on the Senate side. So I'd be eager to see how soon maybe the Senate Agriculture Committee can address some of that as well. That's what's going on here. So stay tuned. WIP Plus is not over, and yeah, I'll be eager to see how this transpires in the weeks ahead.
We're paying a lot of attention to markets, Randy. It seems like we've been on the downside. It's at least the way we're sitting as we wrap up this week.
Well, it's what's odd though too is we're still trading in the range. We've been basically sideways here for the last month. We've had some extremely wide ranges and extremely volatile conditions with this. First we move higher, then we move lower, and right now we're toward the lower end of that recent range. And we are going to end the week here. At least right now, looks like we're going to be down just a little bit here for the week. But for the most part, we just have not done anything. You get the sense that traders are just kind of waiting to see what kind of production issues or what kind of production we do get. They're just kind of buying time as we, today now is the first notice day for the August soybeans. So then mid-month that goes off the board, and then the November becomes the lead month, and which is the cash month here. So that November soybean contract, I guess some of the traders I talked to had talked about this futures price will likely have to come up to meet the cash price because we're seeing the basis over in some places yet. Speaking of basis, we are seeing that move here the last couple of days. We did see some basis drop dramatically as they switch months, but then your cash price has been holding fairly strong here, which is pretty much just at the futures price or just a hair above. So that's same with corn market too, and it all depends on what kind of demand there is right now. And some of the ethanol plants are still trading. Matter of fact, I think it was Agtegra down in Aberdeen, Grebner basically, I think was at $1 over on the corn market yesterday. So still some very, very good basis available. Thing is, it changes minute by minute. So if you've got crop to sell, your best just hopping online or giving them a call and seeing what kind of a basis they've got. And just because one month has a big basis number and the next month, if they're basing it off of a different, is not, check the cash price, because sometimes just the variation in the different futures contracts can make that up. So it's been one of those advisable to just kind of make sure you check ahead before you sell anything over the phone.
So beans are made in August, so we'll be continuing to watch the weather here as we move forward to this market, right?
Yeah, that's correct. And any kind of weather issue, if we don't get any rain here now in the next couple of weeks, we're going to see prices climb dramatically. If we do get rain and a lot of it, we'll see prices fall dramatically. So it's all based around that weather issue.
A couple notes. Last night, Kara, you and I and Jay Rader from our sales staff was down in Prosper, North Dakota for Peterson Farm Seed 25+1. Last year they couldn't celebrate their silver anniversary because of the pandemic, but they made up for it last night. They had a real fun event.
Yeah, it was really neat. They really know how to throw a party. Food trucks and a live band and axe throwing, and so many people. It was so good to actually, because of COVID, we haven't had much of a chance to interact with people. And this was one of those first big events that you got to see people you hadn't seen in a really long time. And it's fun when you can come together and celebrate, and see people that you haven't seen in a long time and celebrate a business. And Farm Network also celebrating, as we all know, the 25th anniversary too. And Julie and Carl had made that note when we visited with them last night. It was fun to also hear Julie and Carl talk a little bit about how their business has changed. And a lot has changed in the 26 years they've been in business. So it was a really neat event to be a part of.
So did you throw your axe, Kara?
I was not brave enough to do that. I was not brave enough. You might ask Don though if he had a chance to do it.
No, I don't think so. But I did get in the food truck line. That was they had a great night. Very fun.
That's where I would be, is in the food truck line. Great food, it sounded too.
They had really good pizza. I think we had some pizza last night.
Very good. Barbecue, they had the whole mix. Next week, I'm going to be hitting the road for Farmfest. Farmfest in Redwood County, Minnesota, southern Minnesota. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, I'll have a chance to moderate a session Tuesday morning taking a look at some of the farm policy issues. They got a great lineup for Farmfest next week. So we're looking forward to the trade show and seeing everybody at that one. And we're also kicking off next week our Parade of Champions, so we can salute our 4-Hers and FFAers. We're in the midst of fair season. North Dakota State Fair, of course, wrapping up here this weekend, and a lot of county fairs continuing as well. But we know all the hard work that goes into those 4-H and FFA livestock projects, all their static projects as well. So we'll be saluting those young people here during the weeks ahead. That kicks off next week here on the Red River Farm Network too. So those are some of the things we're looking at in our Reporter Roundtable. On behalf of Randy, Kara, and Megan, I'm Don Wick. This is the Red River Farm Network.